Their Fluttering Hearts, written by Hippogriff, Magister. Samuel didn't know how he ended up in the world known as Equestria, a land populated by magical talking ponies, but it had been eventful for what it's worth. When he had first arrived, he was wandering through the evergreen forest for weeks without deaths. Just a few hours away, he would have been dead too if it wasn't for a beloved alabaster pony with wings and a long horn that had sensed that something new entered her land. After finding him, she made sure he recovers and survives from his ordeal. He did, and in a short span of time as well. But he didn't care about that. He was just grateful that someone or some pony found him before it was too late. The residents knew this entity as Princess Celestia, and she was curious on how he came into her kingdom out of nowhere, considering she had never seen a human before. Samuel really didn't know either, but he told her everything he knows about his world, and in return, she told him a bit about hers. The incident happened a year ago, and from then on, he adapted well in this alien land despite the initial bumps. While he can spend his time roaming Ponyville, a certain event caused the princess to watch over him from afar. A few months ago, a group of ponies tried to kidnap and use him for God knows what, but it would have been good. Fortunately, Celestia's guards heard a struggle in one of the royal bedrooms and manages to thwart the attempt, as well as alerting the monarch on what transpired. The pony nappers were soon thrown in the dungeons for interrogation. Despite them being put to justice, it was still traumatizing for him. He didn't stop shaking from the fear of what might have happened if they succeeded or what they could have done to him. But what was even more terrifying is that there were probably more of them out there, and that scared him for days. That is until he met her, the one who helped him through it all when no pony else could. The one that kept him sane. A shy, timid soul known as Fluttershy, a light yellow pegasus with light blue eyes, accompanied with a long pink mane that covered the side of her face, as well as a long pink tail, along with a butterfly cutie marks on her flanks. Although she was frightened and wary of him at first because he was a different species, she still manages to stay with the distraught human and offered him comfort as well smoothing words. Soon the fear gradually dissipates every time he talks to her. During those days, she was the only pony to be there for him when he was feeling scared or is having a hard time adjusting to Ponyville. Samuel enjoyed her company just as much she did. She was also drawn in by his exotic stature. After getting to know him, plus she was quite curious about his world, primarily how many species of animals there are. He avoided the dark and gory details of Earth, as well as the animals that are approaching extinction, thanks to humans. He didn't know why, but he just couldn't say those facts to her. He didn't want to lose the only friend he had. Rapidly, days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and months turned into a whole year, as Samuel and Fluttershy's bond grew stronger and unbreakable. They both share some similar traits, as many residents soon saw. They were soft-spoken, very kind to those who are in need, as well as their immense love for animals. On some days he looked at her face, as it always happy to see that beautiful smile on her face, as well as something else. He didn't know why, but every time she smiled or grinned at him, his heart did several flips and his cheeks flushed a beet red. He wondered what's causing those reactions. He had never felt that way before. There was just something about her that was appealing to him. Was it how she cared for animals? Her innocent eyes? Most definitely. Even though she wasn't the strongest pony around, she always strives to improve and gets better. Yep, yep, yep. It was in that moment he had an entropy. My apologies if I say that word wrong. He was in love with Fluttershy. But would she hate him for thinking of her that way? He thought solemnly. Samuel knows she is not a bad pony by any stretch of the word, but he couldn't help but think of the worst case scenarios. Would she reject him outright, be weirded out by it, or even... He shook his head ferociously as he got out of the shower, cleaned up and ready for his casual stroll around town. 30 minutes had passed since he had freshened up. During his walk, he looked in awe of the scenery from Sugar Cube Corner to the Carousel Boutique. It never ceases to take his breath away. But there was only one place he was looking forward to, going to Fluttershy's cottage. While not as colorful as Sugar Cube Corner or spectacular as the boutique, it had a homey feel to it, and he loved that about her. He's been thinking of various ways to say that he has an interest in since the revelation days ago, but didn't know how to do it. Should he just be blunt and say it to her, or give her several hints? His questions were answered when he heard some pony singing a calming tune that seemingly washes away all his worries. He used the tune like a beacon to help him find his destination. Soon after coming out of a large bush, as he was seeing the familiar cottage, as well as the mare that stole his heart. Her long pink mane was dancing in the soft blows of the wind, eyes that sparkling with joy, and fur shining in the morning rays. A smile soon adorns her lips as he saw her perform. Her beautiful vocals filled the air, and he couldn't sigh softly as he just melted onto the ground. He was marveled at what he was witnessing. After a few minutes, she soon descended to the grass, twirling her body as unusual birds surrounded her as she is finishing her encore. Or it's spelled differently for me. She's so amazing, you thought internally, as he just stared at her for long seconds. Yeah, that's not normal in the slightest, but he didn't care. Nope. Then suddenly her blue orbs locked with his, and time seems to stop for the both of them. A smile soon appeared on her face as she saw Samuel, her Samuel. She blushed ferociously as she looked at him as she's now on the ground, finishing with her performance. Samuel got up from the grass, brushing the dirt from his pants from the front of his to the back. Fluttershy trotted slowly to him, that's how it's said to her for some reason, and stopped immediately as her eyes examined his tall, lean form. His long, curvy blonde hair that reaches to his shoulders reminded her of the mane of the young manticore. His dark coloration of his skin made her think of hot cocoa that she sips on a cold day. Then his eyes, two completely different colors. His right eye was a green grass, while his left was an aqua blue, like the clearest waters from the stream as she usually finds in the Everfree Forest. Never in her life she thought that a creature like him could be so intimidating, yet so gentle, kind, smoothing, and she didn't realize her mind was trailing off until she looked up and see Samuel looking at her with a slightly worried look. Are you okay? He said, walking towards her. You were spacing out for a while there. She shook her head, erasing those thoughts from her head as well as she blushed that was riding from her cheeks. She then looked up at him with a sheepish smile. I'm fine, Samuel, she said softly. I'm just a little under the weather, as you say it. Her answer, I completely read that wrong because how fucking, my apologies. Her answer made him smile as he crouched down to reach her level. This action made her giggle a bit, even then he was kneeling. He was still taller than her, but his size didn't fill her with fear. It made her feel safe and protected from anything from outside force that would harm her. It's good to see you, Samuel, she said as she walked over to him and seemingly by instinct wrapped her forelegs around his neck in an affectionate manner. His response, in turn, by wrapping his arms around her middle, but was careful not to accidentally hurt her. He loved the hug she gave him as they reminded him as his mother's back home. Even though he missed his world, besides he had friends and potentially a mare to spend the rest of his life with, hopefully. You too, Butterfly, he replied as he looked at the Pegasus he had an attraction for. The blush returned with a vengeance as he called her that. This caused her to bury her muzzle in his warm chest, trying to hide her embarrassment, which caused him to laugh slightly. Hey, he spoke in a smoothing tone. Don't hide your face, Fluttershy. I want to see that beautiful face of yours. Saying that made her blush until her face was red as an apple. Also, Samuel's face also turned a bright red as he realized he had just said that. Smooth, bro. Real smooth. Fluttershy slowly looked up at his face, cheeks still flushed, but a beautiful smile was plastered on her lips, and it put him at ease. She likes it when he calls her that, even though it sounds a lot like her name. They then looked into each other's eyes for quite a while, and no words were said from their maws. Just staring was enough for them. Both soon realized that they were embracing each other for a lot longer than they expected, and they both slowly but reluctantly let go of each other. It was hard for Samuel to let go of her, but little did he know Fluttershy felt the same way. She didn't want the hug to end either. Silence soon follows as the pair just glanced at each other and looked away just a quick with red cheeks. Fluttershy played with her mane submissively with one of her hooves, and Samuel just scratched his neck nervously as he was trying to find a way to break the ice. The silence quickly gets awkward, but before he had a chance to speak, she responded, "How was your day?" He was numb for a moment. "Oh, right. It was normal, I suppose. How was yours?" Not the response that he was thinking in his head, but he was still tongue-tied. "Oh, it was amazing," she replied with a joyful smile. "These new species of birds drawn to my singing." He then looked at the birds that were flying. They almost looked like droves, but larger in size, as a gray coloration and a vibrant blue eyes. He smiled as she talked about the birds. The one of the smaller ones was seen perched on his shoulder. Surprisingly, their talons didn't sink into his skin as he expected. He scratched his head, electing a coo sound from it. Fluttershy looked at what he was doing, and her heart swelled at the sight. Their eyes met once more, and this time he saw an emotion in her eyes that sent his heart aflutter. This was it. Time to tell her. "Hey, Fluttershy." He swallowed hard. Do you have a boyfriend, by any chance?" You mean a cult friend?" She replied shyly, half of her face covered from her mane. He nodded. "No," she said. "Not many stallions are interested in a mare like me because I'm not like the others." She looked down with a depressed look on her face. Samuel didn't like the look she was giving him, and he frowned as he moved a little bit closer to her. She kept talking. I'm not strong like Applejack, not as beautiful as Rarity, fun like Pinky, fast like Rainbow Dash, or smart like Twilight. She looked even more dejected than before. I'm just me. He couldn't take it anymore. He got up, and when he was close to her, he wrapped his arms around her waist. She gasped breathlessly as she looked at him. She saw an intense emotion in those two beautiful orbs that were overwhelming her. Samuel, what are you? Her words were cut off as his soft lips landed on hers. She was intentionally shocked at his actions, but gave in faster than anticipated, and mawed softly in his mouth. His hands were running around her soft silky mane with such tenderness that nearly caused her to faint. The kiss only lasted for a few seconds, but to them it lasted an eternity, as the pair gasped for air. Their foreheads touched as they gazed at each other, searching for something that only they knew the answer of. Fluttershy licked her lips slowly, and his eyes followed the movement with a heated stare. At the moment, he felt a heat down to his groin that was gradually getting hotter by the second, but he knew he had to be gentle with her. There was something innocent about her, and he didn't want to overwhelm her or hurt her. That was something he didn't want at all. Samuel, She spoke, a bit breathless. He placed her on the grass gently as he gazed at her with a plethora of emotions. Patheria or whatever. My apologies again. But the strongest she saw was love. Love for her. Only her. She then looked between his pants and saw a rather large bulge that caused her to blush ferociously. Oh my, she thought as she looked at it curiously. He smiled as he spoke to her. Fluttershy, you did this to me. He pointed to his slightly twitching erection in his dark brown pants. I don't want anyone else but you. Ever since I almost got abducted, I was scared and paranoid that it would happen again, and no one would have saved me, no one comforted me. He shut his eyes, seeing that memory surface. He then felt a soft hoof on his left cheek and slighted sniffling. He sighed softly as he placed his hand on her outstretched hoof. He continued talking. Then a certain Pegasus saw me in that state and trotted over to me, even though she was terrified of me. She whispered as tears fall from her eyes. But she helped me anyway, helped me become the person I am today, and I am grateful for that. He lowered his, and his nose touched her, and then began to nuzzled her for long seconds. And soon I fell in love with. He didn't finish as his lips were quickly sealed by her own as she lunged at him, making them fall to the grass in a heap with Fluttershy on top of his chest. This kiss was much longer and passionate than the last one, but no less gentle. Their tongues danced as soft moans escaped from their maws. Soon his hands went down to her soft curvy flanks. She moaned and shivered from the sensation of his digits on her. Then his rod was now fully prepared to pleasure this mare. That looks painful. Oh, wrong line. That looks painful, she said. Points to your throbbing digit. Mind if I, help out? Seriously? This causes him to moan out loud. Oh, fuck all. Slowly and cautiously, he takes off his pants, revealing his dark skin as well as his sheath to her. She looked at with increased interest. Soon his hard pull was out of its cage and was present to her, dripping pre-cum and standing at the ready. Fluttershy looked at him with lust, curiosity, and perhaps a bit of fear. Samuel senses her trepidation, intimidation, and looks at her with an understanding look. You know, you don't have to prove yourself to me. We can wait until you're ready. She shakes her head with a look of determination and made her decision. I want you, she replied, her expression not falling in the slightest. All right, he complied, but I have to prepare you. She tilted her head adorably. What do you eep? One of his hands rested on her lowered abdomen and squeaked from the odd sensation down there, but it was a good feeling. She then fell on her back, revealing her wet slit to him. It was too much for him, but he held on for her sake. Fluttershy let out a short moan as one of his digits explored her inner walls, feeling her crevice. 2 fingers and then 3, the mare arched her back and a bit of her forelegs to her muzzle from her pleasure. He could see it in her eyes. She wants him to keep going, and that's exactly what he'll do. Her pleasure comes first before his own, even though he wants to be balls deep inside of her right now. He'll hold on, though he'll wait until she comes. He didn't have to wait long, as he felt her first orgasm, felt her liquids flooding his fingers as he finishes. She was breathing hard. She never felt anything this good before in her life. That was amazing. He smiled back at his mare. Don't worry. I'm done with pleasuring you yet. I'm not done pleasuring you. This line's fucked up. My apologies. I'm not done pleasuring you yet, Butterfly. His once calm, smoothing voice turned into a husky griff tone from the lust he's feeling. He shivered in delight as he said that to her. He then slowly glided the tip towards her marehood. He had to be careful while doing this. From the look in her eyes, this was indeed her first intimate experience with a male. So he calmed himself as much as he could and caressed the sides of her face with his hands as his face inches away from hers. Are you ready? He whispered, even deeper than before. She nods. I want you to feel inside of me, she whispers back, her voice losing that innocent tone and a sultry edge to it. Slowly he thrusts into her. A large gasp escapes their mouths as her tight honeypot was clamping down on his manhood hard, not letting him go at all. It took every ounce of willpower not to come right there, even though reacting and thrusting back in the same time a bit faster. She couldn't stop the sensual sounds from escaping her muzzle as she moans and whimpered, as her senses were heightened to the point where she couldn't think. She could only feel. The thrust soon became faster as he now got a rhythm and had no plans of stopping anytime soon. The sounds of their pleasure filled the sky as they panted, moaned, groaned, and whined. Time wasn't even an issue as they went at it with reckless abandon. But everyone has a limit. Soon he lost control, and with one final thrust, his seed lathered her insides with its warmth, and her marehood tightened around him, wanting every drop of her lover's essence. A full minute has passed, and his body was entering a state of fulfillment and exhaustion. Then his hard steel popped out of her as he watches with a state of pride as he saw his cum flowing out of her slit. He landed on his back, breathing hard as she crawled on top of him, not taking her eyes off of him. She shuffled closer to him, chest and resting on her head. underneath his chin, nuzzling him affectionately. "I love you, Sammy," she said, satisfied at her first sexual experience. He draped one of his arms around her middle and kissed her forehead, causing her to coo softly. "And I love you too, my beautiful butterfly." After their lovemaking, the two soulmates simply looked at the sky, snuggling affectionately as the birds were flying around them with curious gazes. They didn't really understand what caused them to feel that way, feel towards the other. Was it fate or something else entirely? They didn't have the time to answer, nor did they want to find out. All they know is that they are one, now and forever. Author's note. Another clop for you guys. Unlike the other one, which had hot, steamy, this one was slightly more tame and cheesy. Didn't know if I did well on this, but I think I captured Fluttershy's personality well. Positive criticism is recommended. Well, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed that story. That was really beautiful and nice. I actually really do like the hell out of that story. What I think of it, what it needs to be fixed, is some of the sentences that are in there that are basically fucked up, and you can tell that I had to stop a couple of times and add some words in there to make it sound a bit better. And overall, this story is still good. It just needs that quick fix up, and it's good. It's not shit. It's not. Let me tell you that. I read some pretty shitty stories in the past that were way worse. You know, but anyway, I hope you guys enjoy. I need to stop going along with these monologues, but I hope you guys do enjoy, and peace out. And I have another reading next Saturday or this Saturday. It just depends. It's something really special, and I hope you guys really enjoy it. And peace out once again. My apologies.